Hi, I'm Amy Palmer with Knit Scene Magazine, and I'm here to talk about how to measure gauge. Gauge is a tricky subject. It's technically defined as the tension in the yarn. So if you look at this swatch here, you'll see that it's very even, and it's a slightly bigger gauge, or different gauge, than this one. And this is the difference between an unblocked swatch and a blocked swatch. In our Interweave titles, we use the blocked gauge to listen the patterns, which means you should always swatch before you start knitting one of our patterns to make sure that your gauge matches what our pattern says. So I'm going to talk about how to measure the gauge. First, you're going to take a tape measure or a ruler, and typically gauge is measured over 4 inches. These swatches are a little small, so I'm going to go over 2 inches. I'm going to lay my ruler, my tape measure, over the swatch and try to get it to lay as flat as I possibly can. I'm going to take a pointing tool, such as this double point needle. You can also use a pen or just anything to help you count the stitches. And I'm going to count from my left to right, that's 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches in 2 inches, which would tell you that this gauge is about 4.5 stitches to the inch. Now in the pattern, you would see it as probably 18 stitches over 4 inches. You also want to count the rows. So I'm going to lay it vertically alongside a column of stitches. And again, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and that's kind of a half. But again, if I was doing this over a larger swatch, it would be about 27 stitches to 4 inches. So that would tell you to match that against what the pattern says. But that's our unblocked swatch, and our pattern is measured to the blocked swatch. So I'm going to pull in our blocked swatch and do the same thing again. I'm going to lay this down and count over 2 inches. Oops, even that up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 8.5 stitches. So we see that this actually grew just a little bit in the blocking. So this would be 17 stitches over 4 inches. And it's not a huge difference, but it can make a difference in your pattern. Again, to do the rows, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and about a half. So that's 25 rows to 4 inches, or 12.5 to the 2 inches. So again, you see there's slight differences. It's probably not going to make a big difference when you're knitting, but sometimes you'll see that a yarn will change a great deal between an unblocked swatch and a blocked swatch. So gauge matters when you're measuring garments especially, as you can see in the double puff sweater by Erica Schluter from Knitwear Fall. This uses 2 different weights of yarn, and so you'll want to have swatched for both different yarns. The gauge that you get for the worsted weight down here at the bottom is going to be slightly different than the gauge for the lace weight at the top. So gauge is really important when you're knitting, and I hope this helps you learn how to measure your gauge better.